So, hi, Alicia.
Hi.
Do you want to tell me more
Hi.
about yourself?
Hi, my name is Alicia. Most people know me as Ali because on my arts account, I'm called Alyletters, Alyletters. So basically,
Yeah.
I'm a Singaporean calligrapher and designer.
Mm-hmm.
I specialize in bespoke artwork, stationery, wedding products and services, as well as
Yeah.
workshops. So in gist, that's a lot of words, but in gist, I basically do art, I teach art, and
Mm-hmm.
then I use art to connect with and understand God better. So
Okay.
why I really started everything is I hope that my art and sharing my journey openly with others will help
Mm-hmm.
them also in their faith walk. And that's my main motivation for starting Alyletters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when do you start it? How do you start it?
I actually started this in university. So I studied in
Mm-hmm.
NTU.
Yeah.
I have an engineering degree in triple
Yeah.
E, electrical engineering. So actually, I have loved art since I was really, really young, but
Mm-hmm.
I've
Mm-hmm.
never pursued it because, I mean, there's a lot of stereotypes on what artists are like. It is not a
Yeah.
real
Yeah.
job. People can't make a real living. And
Yeah.
most recently, Straits Times has classified us as non-essential.
Yeah.
So, since young, I think it is not anyone's fault, but my
Mm.
family is just very practical lah. So I followed them and I never really pursued it. But in university, because I think it's really by God's grace, He put
Mm.
me in this course. So it's actually called Information Engineering and Media,
Yeah.
which means we do majority engineering, but
Mm-hmm.
20% of my course, which is also examinable, is art and design. So we would go to Wee Kim Wee School of Communications as well as
Mm.
Art Design and Media School. So because of that, it gave me like a legit reason
Mm-hmm.
to be better at art. Yeah, so
Mm.
I took up painting and calligraphy at the same time, not because I needed to at school. At school, they usually do like digital designs. But when I took up
Mm.
calligraphy and painting, it was really to de-stress because I needed an outlet. Like every day, my mind is just filled with formulas, filled
Yeah.
with math and physics and engineering stuff. So, yeah, I just needed an outlet to create. And that's how I
Mm-hmm.
started the entire thing. So it started off as a hobby.
Yeah.
And by God's grace, it has really turned into a full-time thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so you mentioned that you started with engineering and now you're in art. Was that switch
Yeah.
difficult?
I think that so this has to do a lot with people's calling on their lives, right? Like
Yeah.
I think a lot of uni students and even some young working adults who are already in the workforce always struggle with what am I supposed to do with my life? Like
Yeah.
I want to do this, but this is not feasible. I want to do that, but that's not what
Mm.
my parents think works, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
what you asked is actually a very relevant question. Like how did I switch from engineering to art? And my
Mm-hmm.
answer in summary is that it's not an overnight thing.
Mm.
Yeah, so I studied engineering and I did art as a hobby for a very long while. I started this
Mm-hmm.
in 2014, 2015. So till
Yeah.
now, it's really been 5 years. I've only done this full time for the past 1 year. After
Mm-hmm.
I graduated university with an engineering degree, I went into marketing
Okay.
because I couldn't do engineering. Like, it's just not my thing. So when I
Yeah.
went into marketing, I still did Alyletters as a side.
Yeah.
And I will only advise people to really switch into full time when they know that there is demand for what they want to do.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. So even though I was working with a full time job, people were still asking me to do commission works. People
Yeah.
were still asking me to do workshops. And personally, for me, when I'm at work and when like things are not as busy, people usually like daydream or like usually the things we daydream about are the things that deep down in our heart we want to do most,
Yeah.
right? So when I was daydreaming, I always dreamt of I just want to do art for a living. I want to teach
Mm-hmm.
people. I want to
Yeah.
interact with people.
Yeah.
So when I quit my job and went to Bible school, I was actually supposed to go back to work after Bible school, but it took a really big leap of faith and a lot of time with God to really find peace and to commit 2 years to Him and say, God, like I'm gonna try this out, and if it doesn't work, it's okay. Like at least I know I tried.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it. It's not an overnight thing.
Yeah. So it's more like a process whereby you
Mm,
work through when you think it's the right time to stop your
yeah,
job and to go full time into doing
yeah,
something artistic.
yeah.
So yeah.
There's always an element of sacrifice, I feel. Like for the
Mm,
first year, so for the past like half year or almost a year or so, if I were to compare my salary
yeah.
compared to if I was working and climbing the corporate ladder, it's definitely
Yeah.
not comparable. But
Yeah.
I think that's where the faith element comes in. Like one
Yeah.
testimony I can really share with you, right, is that
Mm-hmm.
since the start of my art journey all the way till now, I have never, ever asked anyone if I can do art for them. I've always been approached by
Mm,
private clients and corporate clients. And I think it's actually quite amazing because if you look at my portfolio, and this is not humble bragging, it's really just like sharing with you how God has brought
yeah.
people into
Yeah.
my life. I've
Yeah.
never approached any companies. Never in my wildest dreams would I think I would work with corporate clients. But over the years, I've worked with cosmetic brands like Laura Mercier. I've worked
Mm-hmm.
with clothing brands like Wing Tai, you know, Topshop, Topman,
Yeah.
a Mango Warehouse. Yeah, I've also
Mm,
worked with Prestige Magazine. I've worked with Club 21, the Como Group. I worked with
yeah.
Shopee, and just last week I worked with BMW.
Mm,
So I've never reached out, but I think that when you are in your calling and when you're really doing what God has uniquely made you to do, it says in the Bible that He has already prepared good things for you to walk in, right?
mm, mm,
So if you walk in what He has written about you in His book before before your life even began, like
yeah.
it's all planned out and we don't have to live
Mm-hmm.
in scarcity. I think that's something a lot of artists struggle with. Like when they think about going to the industry, they're like, it's so saturated, everyone is so good, how am I going to stand out? But that
Mm-hmm.
is really looking at things from a mindset of scarcity, of there is a pie, and if someone
Yeah.
takes a bit of a pie, that's lesser for me. But that's
Mm,
not really the case, because in God's kingdom there's abundance and your portion is already set aside for you. So
mm,
there's no
mm,
competition and you don't really need to compare.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if that's digressing, but that's just a
Yeah.
testimony I wanted to
Yeah.
share.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like from those experiences you've been learning that it's about
Mm,
learning to see beyond scarcity into
mm,
the abundance of God,
yeah,
and learning to have faith rather than fear in
yeah,
choosing this journey of art rather
yeah.
than a secure corporate job.
Mm. It
Yeah.
actually takes a lot of mental strength, and not a lot of people can do that. And that's why it's very easy to start. Like, that's what I would share with you. It's very easy to say,
Yeah.
I want to start this, but
Yeah.
it takes a lot more to stay in it and to really
Mm-hmm.
persevere. And people will be like shocked. They'll be like, oh my gosh, how do you manage to do this? And they also
Yeah.
want to start it. But then they get very discouraged early on because they compare their day 10 with your day like 1000. And they
Mm,
don't see all the hard work, all the
mm,
crying, all the uncertainty that you have overcome to get to where you are today. And that's what not a lot of people talk about, I guess.
mm,
Not
mm.
just in art, but in any industry that you're in.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Mm.
Sure. So the journey through art, or more widely in entrepreneurship, is very,
Yeah,
very long, and we shouldn't
it
just be
is.
focused on success, but we should think more about the failures that we will inevitably face
Mm,
during the journey.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think you summarized it well.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, I just wanted to pivot more broadly into
Mm,
your work in creativity. I mean, a lot
mm.
of young people or adults actually find it hard to be creative. They say things like, I'm not creative, I don't know how to do art. Are these some of the barriers that you face in the clients that you meet?
Yes, actually. So, um, I would like to, with regards to your question, go
Mm-hmm.
back to something that I actually created. Let me see if I have it here. So I actually created this thing called a brush lettering starter kit.
Yeah.
It helps people to learn calligraphy from scratch, and it's actually a
Mm-hmm.
compilation of what I teach in my workshops. So a lot of
Yeah.
my clients, when they come to workshops, they're like, you know what, I really, really wanted to try this. I wanted to
Yeah.
try a new art form, but I just don't know how to start. Actually, I don't even know whether after this class I can do it. And what I always tell them is it takes a lot of work. Like people think that art is just, oh, if you're gifted and you have the talents, then you will do well. But it's not true. We are all gifted with different amounts of talent, and it is our duty to multiply what we have been gifted. So this brings back to the parable of the talents. Like, you know, you're given 2 sacks of gold. All you're expected to multiply in return is 2 sacks of gold. But if you're given 5, then more is expected of you. So for people who really want to start being creative, my advice to them is you need to set time aside. Like, there's really no excuse. People always say you're busy with doing this, you're busy doing that. But at the end of the day, if, for example, you prioritize your family, you'll make time for them, right?
Yeah.
And so if you prioritize really wanting to be creative, you will make time for that. And you won't let the barrier of, I don't think I'm good enough, stop you, because the desire to want to try is just greater. So that's what I think we can't really help people with. It needs to come from their own desire. But I think that as long as they want to and they set the time aside, they will definitely be able to find a way. And one way I can suggest, if you really want to start your creative journey but you don't know where to start, but you just want to, I think a good first step would be to enroll yourself in a class, whether it's mine or someone else's. I think that it helps really to like build the foundation lah. So like, for example, if you want to learn watercolor but you have no idea what paints to use or what brushes to use, just really setting $150 aside for one basic workshop can get you started for like many years down the road, because people just don't know where to start and they just need someone who has done it before to give them a roadmap, not the entire roadmap, but at least the starting phase. So that's what most people who come to my workshops do. I would say it's a 50-50. 50% of them go on and they really practice hard and they send me their work. They're like super on. They're like, Ellie, so I did this week. Like, I can't seem to get this part right. Like, do you have any advice? And I will give them free advice. But then the other 50% just disappear. And then 2 years later, they'll be like, oh my gosh, I forgot everything I learned. So at the end of the day, it's really just putting in time and effort and really wanting to do it. I think it's really that desire.
Okay. So that's like a barrier that you see, like people not wanting to put in enough effort, is it? And time? Okay. Are there any other barriers that you've observed?
What you mentioned is true about people not believing that they are good enough. So I think that the beauty about art, right, is that you can't quantify what is good and what is bad. You can only do that if you compare yourself with someone else. But actually, if you think about it, if you are really a true artist, you wouldn't be creating for other people. You would create because you love it. You'll be creating for yourself. You'll be creating because, hey, this is a way that I'm going to treat myself. Art is actually you valuing me time, you valuing investing in yourself. So if you take the stress of my art is not as good as someone else, and you just create for the sake of it, and you just keep improving because you are creating for yourself, I think it takes a lot of the stress out of I'm not good enough. Because who defines whether you're good enough? If there's if there's any industry that you can be the most free in, it's art. Right? Like if you're in the math industry, for example, there are results. People can literally grade you. If you are in even business, like I'm in business and art, right? I can be a great artist, but I can be a horrible businessman, businesswoman. So I think for art, when people think that they're not good enough, what they really need to ask themselves in return is, who says so? And if you really like art, who are you creating for? So I think it boils down really back to the intentions, boils down back to perspectives and why they want to do this. Do they want to do this really so that they can show off to the world? Then that wouldn't be for themselves anymore. Because personally, even for me, even though now it is a business, I still intentionally take time to create for myself. And these works never see the light of day because they're just for me. And that's how I
Yeah.
started. I created for me. I have stacks of works that people have never seen, not even my own family or my own boyfriend has ever seen,
Yeah.
because it's for me, it's between me and God. And I love to create, so I do it. Yeah.
Okay.
Also, one more thing I want to add is that if you are Christian and you are thinking that I can't create, I think one truth that really encouraged me a lot is that
Yeah.
in Genesis 1:1, the first verse of the entire Bible, it says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth," right? And then later on in the same chapter, in verse 27, he said, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them." And so if we look at the link between these two verses, it literally tells us that we can be creative
Yeah.
because God is creative and we are made in his image. There
Yeah.
is no barrier. Yeah.
Okay.
And the characteristic is already inbuilt in us.
Yeah.
So everyone is creative. It doesn't necessarily have to come out even in art. It can be in business ideas. It can be in strategizing.
Yeah.
It can even be like with all the Lego blocks I see behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, thanks for sharing that. I think that's really profound. I mean,
Yeah.
why do you yourself create all this?
I create because it really brings me a lot of joy. Yeah, there's no other way to put it. Why I
Yeah.
decided to turn this into a business,
Mm-hmm.
which is different from why I love creating,
Yeah.
is because for me, I looked back at the pattern of my life.
Yeah.
So I think this is actually a very helpful tip. A lot of people ask me, how do you know you're meant to do this? I said, I don't know.
Yeah.
But if I look back at the pattern of my life, right, like when I was in primary school, I have always loved art. I bring like a notebook to dinners, like family dinners, and I'm always drawing before the food comes.
Yeah.
So it's just a natural gifting, a natural desire that God has given to me. With regards to entrepreneurship, I look back at the pattern of my life. I started this like lame business when I was in primary 4. It's called the Little Massagers. So I would literally massage my parents' feet, and then I sold them a 1-year membership for $5. But actually, I only opened my shop like 3 days a year: Mother's Day, Father's Day, and Christmas.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, it's very ridiculous, the things we do when
Yeah.
we're young. But when you look back at the pattern of your life and the things you just did for fun and you learn how to piece it together, I saw in my pattern of my life, I saw entrepreneurship, I saw creativity, I saw art. I saw even like I studied engineering, right? And in JC, I did PCME, which is physics, chem, econs, math. So my brain is also very factual and very structured, which I think also comes into good play in my business, because they say a lot of artists are just like always thinking outside of the box. They have no structure, they have no step by step. They are just their head is in the clouds. But I think that the unique journey that God has brought me on, and that God will bring different people on, will really speak to what you need to do in your life. So for me, mixing engineering and mixing art actually is a very great combination. A lot of people wouldn't be able to see that, but for me, I see it because I can code my own website.
Yeah.
I can design my own website and make it look good. I don't just code it, I can design it, I can do both. And that's how the iPhone even came about, right? Because Steve Jobs loved design and technology together. So I think it's a very great combination. I'm very thankful that God brought me to this. It's something that I could have never planned on my own, ever.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I hope that doesn't digress.
Yeah. No. That's really useful. I mean, so thanks for sharing that journey. I mean,
No
in
problem.
Singapore, sometimes art isn't seen as that important. So, what do you say to those people watching or listening that might think, okay, art is not that important. Maybe I shouldn't do this.
I think with regards to that, we also have a part to play as artists. So Singapore is the way it is, not because it's our fault, not because it's Singapore's fault, but because the nature of our country is that we have had a tough history.
Yeah.
And to be able to survive, our society values certain jobs, certain traits more than others. So as an artist in today's Singapore today, what I would really say to artists who want to go into this industry but who think that they will not be valued, maybe I would like to challenge you to say that could you educate the public to value art as well? So for me, like, I do art in terms of calligraphy and brush lettering, right? But not everyone thinks that this is a useful thing. So it is my job to show what value I can put into their lives. So I have used my art form, which I think is the most practical of art forms, because it has to do with words, right? To really add value into people's lives, to encourage them, to show them that, hey, when I pick up this skill, it helps me to reflect on God's word. It helps me to de-stress. It helps me to bless other people. It is a vehicle, a tool. So like how learning math, learning physics, learning engineering is a tool, art is also a tool for you to do something to add value to other people's lives. So I think it takes a lot of time, but I'm very encouraged because over the course of 5 years, I have sold like 400 of these. 400 people have spent $73 to buy a book and a pen to learn art. And I think that just shows that people's mindsets are changing. And if you want it to accelerate, as an artist, we all have a part to play in educating people. So one of the questions that people always ask me is they want to create art, but they want to be valued for what they create. But then they can't compare with like people on Carousel selling their cards for like $5, but they want to sell it for $35. So I think that what I would say to that is you need to educate people on what goes into your art. Why someone else sells it for $5 is maybe they don't have the competency, they don't put in a lot of time and effort into that, and that's why they're selling it, or they don't even know how much their art is worth. But if you know how much your art is worth, you have the competency level, and you know why you're charging a certain amount and why you're not overcharging, why you're not undercharging, then tell people. So an example of this is I used to have an acrylic piece of artwork, and then I did a poll on Instagram. I was like, hey guys, so I did this acrylic piece of artwork. How much would you pay for it? And a lot of people replied me, they would pay like, oh, maximum $20, maximum $25. And so I didn't take it to heart. I was not offended at all. So what I did next was the next day I said, hey guys, thanks all for your feedback. And then I posted their feedback and I showed people, like people pay $20, $25. And then I said, so if you look at this piece of artwork, people would pay $25 for it. But if I shared with you what goes into this artwork, would you humor me and let me know how much you would actually pay for it now that you know what goes into it? So I went through all the steps. I gave the video evidence. I said, okay, so to do this artwork, first I need to purchase the acrylic and I need to quality check whether there are any scratches or whatnot. Next, I need to digitize the letters or the text that I want to do on this acrylic. Then I need to vectorize it all into Illustrator. Then I need to send it into the printer. They need to cut it out in vinyl. And I need to peel out everything hand by hand and then transfer it into the acrylic. After that, because I want to protect the artwork, I would bind the artwork in between two acrylic pieces so that the artwork is preserved forever and can be kept for a very long time. So I just put the process out there so that people knew what goes into the artwork. And then I did another poll and said, now that you know what goes into creating this artwork, how much would you pay for it? And you can change your answer or you can give me the same answer. And so some majority of the people were like, oh my gosh, I never knew like that's what goes into this artwork. Now that I know, I think that $80 is a very reasonable price. So I think that when people are afraid that they are not valued, they don't realize that they also have a part to play in education. So that's my take on it.
That's a very good point. If you don't value yourself, no one will value you.
Exactly. So you need to be clear. So that you can articulate that.
And so, I mean, as we wrap up this interview, do you have anything that you wanted to say that I haven't asked yet?
Not really. To close, maybe I would like to share that when you think of art, I think you should really start off with the intention to create and not to make money.
Yeah.
That's what I would say, because a lot of people these days, they look at art as a money-making tool. And it is true, like art can be a money-making tool. But if you go into it with that mindset and that sole purpose, to use a harsh word, it would be a disgrace. Because you're not really creating because you love it anymore. You're creating for money, and that just, it spoils the market for true artists. And like, I think that when you really love art, you would do it for free. If you really love your job, you would do it for free. Like if you love coaching so much, you would take on beta clients and do it for free because you genuinely enjoy it. So that's the advice I want to give people. I want to encourage everyone to really explore art, because I think that there is creativity in everyone. It's just how you express it. So it is also a very good way to de-stress. It is a good way to find yourself. That sounds very profound, but it's actually not very profound. It's just a way to express yourself, just another tool. So approach it with love, but don't put too much stress on yourself, and just create because you love it and you just want to explore. And I think that you will find a lot of joy in just creating, because everyone loves to create. Like, we're taught to draw and write when we're so young, and it helps in many other aspects as well. Like when I did my art in university, helped me to think better also, because it cleared my mind and it allowed me to reprocess all the formulas, all the strategies that I needed to remember, because things were just more in order.
Thank you so much for sharing that, to be brave and courageous in our artistic pursuits.